embodied minds, flourishing lives. Greg Klym is a mindfulness and embodiment coach devoted to guiding people toward deeper flourishing. Once a competitive NCAA hockey player, coach, and corporate salesperson, Greg embarked on a profound shift after confronting depression and burnout. Through yoga, meditation, and the science of neuroplasticity, one of my favorite topics, he reoriented his life around awareness, body, and inner wisdom. Today, he works with individuals, high performers, teams, and organizations, helping clients rewire old patterns, cultivate emotional resilience, and live with clarity and purpose. Greg believes flourishing is not a destination, but a living, breathing practice in body, mind, and heart. Greg Klym, welcome to the Flourish Feed Podcast.
Gillian, so good to be with you. Thank you.
Now, I understand your path. It sounds like it took you from competitive athletics into corporate sales, and now this life that's dedicated to a mindfulness and embodiment. What was the inflection point? Can you take us on that journey a little bit? Was it one moment? Was it a series of moments that took you from, let's call it, doing to being?
Yeah. Gosh, I think it had been a lifelong process that was building. If I really take a step back and reflect on my path from my younger years and on up, I think that really, I think it was around 2007, 2008 that, my way of being was very much around achievement and specifically around athletics to that point and into the sales a bit. But the bulk of my younger years were really around competitive athletics and just striving and achieving. And there was just amazing things that came from that way of being, that process. And I'm guessing we'll get into that at some point, but it had served me up until that point. And I didn't realize at the moment that there was a lot of inner energies, ways of thinking, things that I was believing that weren't serving me. And that manifested in the way of unmanaged stress, which turned into some mental health challenges, specifically with respect to depression and anxiety. So it was around 2007, 2008 that it all just kind of came to a head. And I say this kind of jokingly, but it's true. It was the worst time of my life, but the best time of my life, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because it was really my rock bottom at that point, dark place and a bit scary. I had never really experienced that sort of mental, emotional state prior to that. So I didn't know what to do with it. And I'm a very curious person by nature. So naturally, I just went into, okay, what do I do with this? And how can I learn about it? And what's actually happening? And where do I go? So that was the turning point, that pain and suffering, that mental, emotional pain and suffering for me was really the turning point for me to maybe take a closer look at things.
It's a blessing there that you had curiosity, because I think of that as probably one of the most important superpowers we can continue to bring with us through our lives as a way of coping with uncertainty and things that befall us like that. It sounds like, and I don't know your age and I'm not going to ask it, but 2007, 2008, you had come through athletics. You had entered corporate life. Were both of those experiences of athletics and corporate life, I mean, they were obviously high pressure. There was a lot of demand on you, but was there a ton of accolade as well in there that had to be unpacked as part of the opposite of what you were feeling when you say you hit rock bottom? Was it about that kind of volatility of life experience? Tell us more about how it hit with both of those careers of yours.
Yeah, it's such a good question. There was a reconciling of it all that really was the early part of this whole experience, was like the why behind it. Like, how did I get to this point? And, so with that curiosity, which I agree with you is such an important piece for us as humans, is to really kind of wonder and explore and investigate, this identity that I had kind of created from a very young age through competitive athletics. It's this sense of self that I mean, we all have a sense of self, and we learn it from many different sources. But for me, it was, I learned at an early age that I had some skill. I had some athletic skill, and I was getting accolades at a fairly early age, and there was external validation, and then there was a reinforcement of that validation, and then there was playing a higher level of hockey. I played all sports, but really hockey was my primary sport, and you start to envision can I take this to a higher level? And, down the line, would there be an opportunity to play professionally? And we're just in Canada where it's just such a thing, especially for hockey. It's like, it's just so ingrained in us. And I was no different than any other kid, and so that kind of built throughout the years. You have this identity and you have this striving and this achieving and the validation, and it kind of fed me, if I'm being honest. And it felt good.
Sure.
To achieve, and it felt good to be noticed. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, for me, it was, that identity started to kind of solidify that this is who I am. Greg the athlete, and I'm Greg the achiever, and I'm Greg the student who does well in school. And, and all of that was like, where do I take this? What are the possibilities? Along with that, Gillian comes an inner critic, right? This voice inside that says, okay, this is the bar that you're setting. You now need to get there. And if you don't get there, there's trouble, this inner voice. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, these voices that we have within us. And that was one for me that was really, really prominent. And, it pushed me, and it served me to a certain degree, but it was very detrimental with respect to my mental health. And I didn't realize this until I really got to that point of depression and anxiety, that, I took that inner critic and it drove me into my career as a coach and my career in sales. And it was this mindset, this expectation that I have to be at this certain level.
You have to win. Was win your word? Was a win thing?
Winning, and it's achieving, and it's like just being the best, right? That was always kind of in the backdrop. And I'm like, I didn't know any different. It's just, this is who I was, right? And this is what I was doing. So
you've definitely done a lot of work since then, because I've known you since about 2011, right? Maybe 2012. And I would never have guessed that about you. So obviously what you do very well. And I imagine, it's true. When you do things for yourself, and I call myself my favorite test dummy, right? I try things out before I try to explore them with other people, concepts or conversations or what have you. When you said you took this attitude into coaching, when did that shift happen? Because you're not that way as a coach now. You've never been that way as far as I've known you. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I've got this other side of me that's very nurturing. And, my parents did I think a wonderful job, and as humans, they were like that just naturally. So that was part of my upbringing, is this caring, kind, and mentoring type way. And so I was exposed to that. So I always had that, but it's kind of a duality, a sense of duality with that piece, right? Two things can be true at the same time. You can have that ability to be caring and compassionate and be a good listener, but also have that drive and have that, okay, I'm running my own business now, and I want it to thrive, and I want it to be the best that it can be. And that will always be a part of me. And I love that I still have that in me, because I've taken a path into well-being, and specifically with mindfulness and this self-exploration piece. It doesn't mean that, that I sit on a couch and just kind of lay back and I'm all zen all the time. It's
doubtful. Yeah.
Which I do have an edge and I do have a drive, but it's just a different, I probably use the word energy a lot. And that may be a bit, a bit new agey or abstract, but it is an energy that I have within me that supports me in many ways, both of those ways.
So when it comes to that energy, and either an inner cue that you see in yourself or that you try to develop in the work with your clients, it sounds like that energy is driving you towards flourishing. It's driving you to feel connected and to feel achievement and to feel healthy and well and to have positive social relationships. If it's not the old Greg drive that we look for as a cue that's happening, what are some of the cues that tell you it's happening now? A healthy flourishing, a healthy drive.
Yeah. And this is a hard one to describe because it is a feeling. It's, and as you were speaking there, and I think about this a lot, and I talk about this a lot, the relationship that we have with any sort of experience, be it an internal or external. And, through my own self-discovery and learning how my mind works, and, we have wants and needs and desires. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if I come back to that inner critic and that expectation, the outcome, it's like my relationship with that whole piece has softened. The best way to describe it. It's I can be driven and I can strive and I can want to achieve, but I have a looser relationship or a lighter relationship with what the outcome is, which for me is, it's just happened organically, but I, with the awareness that comes with practice, you start to see it and you start to consciously want to work with it. So I've done a lot of work in this area to kind of create a softer space inside of myself to stay with an edge, but also let go of the outcome. And that's been a more just for my well-being and also the people that I work with. I think that people feel that. I hope they feel it, because that's what I'm experiencing internally.
I'm sure. And I think some of the terms that we often talk about will be intrinsic versus extrinsic.
Yeah.
You have detached yourself somewhat, at least a part of you, from the outcome, which sounds like you're letting go of some of the extrinsic validation in favor of an intrinsic feeling that you have about process. Is it about the integrity of how you carry it out more than the outcome itself? Is that maybe a part of the recipe there?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I use the word intention, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and being really clear on that. And there's a lot to explore when you start to ask that question of yourself, like, because for many, many years my intentions weren't, it was self-absorption, to be really honest, and it was about feeding the ego and feeding that myself, that identity. And when you start to work with that and that softening happens, it's like there's a kind of a natural shift, a paradigm shift within. I have felt that it's just different for me now. So there's that shift, and it's very dynamic. It's a very dynamic process. And it's a gradual process in many ways. And it's fascinating to me to think that we have this capacity as humans to explore some of this stuff and see what's working, not working.
Absolutely. I think when I look at the work that we're now doing with what I call the 5 factors of flourishing, it's based on this 87-year ongoing study from Harvard University, that if we prioritize our positive social relationships, our physical and mental health, our meaning and purpose, our autonomy and agency, and our achievement and growth, and we invest in that the way you're talking, we invest intentionally, we focus on the process and don't attach ourselves so much to the outcome, that the work itself, based on that balance, that apparently a lot of people have lived a very long, happy life based on those 5 things, that if we trust that process, we can reach this place where we have that balance with the ego. We have a safe duality. We don't have something that's overpowering. So when you're talking with your clients about embodiment and the mind and the brain and body awareness and emotional regulation, I love the idea of neuroplasticity. If you want to throw some geeky terms in there with me, how do you integrate those with your coaching? Like when someone says, I'm stuck, where do you start?
Yeah, I love all those terms too. They put a smile on my face. It's if we're going to make any sort of shift or change in our lives and integrate some of those. That study, I love that study, by the way. I think it's, flourishing is multifaceted, and it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things. But, when I think of flourishing, I think of being well in mind, body, and spirit, and making some of those lifestyle choices that support that. So, with clients that I work with, it's primarily, for me, it's about safety and trust in any sort of connection. It's developing that, because when we feel safe and we feel seen and heard, I think our guard drops, and we come out of fight or flight, which is a response that we're in a lot of the time, and we have no idea that we're in it, which is the scary part. This is a whole other conversation, but I'm
going to bring you back to it. Keep going.
So emotional regulation, safety, trust. Out of the stress response, there's more ease, and then there's a space for greater connection. So that's where it starts for me with my clients, and in guiding them with that piece, it's can you start to be the observer of your experience, right? Like, that's the entry point. It's like, if we don't have an ability to connect to that capacity that we all have within us to be more aware, then we can't even take a step, because we really don't know what we're dealing with. So that may sound a bit generic, but it's this ability to observe is the starting point. And then, regulating our bodies, learning how to regulate our nervous system. And when we're in stress, it's like our brains don't function to the best of their ability, right? We are in the old part of the brain that is in emotional reactivity and is in, I need to find safety. So I'm going to get all my systems in place so that I can be safe. So that is the stress response.
I want to geek out there for a minute with you. Yeah. Let's talk about the old brain. Yeah. I want to help people understand where the old brain patterns come from and why they're not as relevant today. Can you help us with that?
this has been around for eons since humans came on this planet. The brain has evolved in a way that this old part of the brain is the survival part of the brain. It's the emotional center that we seek threat and we seek out situations that aren't right. And it's evolved since, and we've got other areas of the brain that allow us to manage that. But this is the primal part of our brain that is always on the lookout for keeping us safe and to allow us to survive. So that just, when that activates, when we, again, whether it's real or perceived, this threat, it's like that part of our brain takes over, right? And we go into, again, the bodily responses that allow us to deal with any sort of threat. And the problem.
And what do those things feel like? Because I think there's very clear signs to you when somebody's in what we call the sympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
When they're there, what are some of the signs so that people can really relate to what that feeling is?
So, it's different for everybody. To a certain degree, but I think generally speaking, the heart rate kicks up. Our blood pressure rises. You can feel your heart literally coming out of your chest at times, depending on what you're navigating through. There's muscle tension. All the internal organs just kind of like the digestion kind of shuts down. Like all these systems do their thing. And you want to talk about wisdom in the body. Like the body is just doing it. We don't have to tell it to go in survival mode. It just does it. Right? So tension, your breath, your breathing patterns change. You're ready to deal with the threat. And we get into this threat and we get into this physiological response. And it's like, if you're chronically stressed, you don't even know you're in it. I didn't know I was in it for years. This is the scary thing about stress. And this is one of my passions in all the things that I do and all the things that I teach is like helping people understand exactly what we're talking about. Is this response in the body? Like, can you feel your shoulders rise? And if they're rising, why are they rising? For me, my jaw will immediately jam tight.
Really?
So it's muscle tension for me. It's my heart. It's unease in my digestive tract. I can feel that tension. It's like, this is my response. That's my body's letting me know that there's something, whether it's real or perceived, there's something not right with you.
And that's the cool thing or cool in a not so great way, but about our world today, it's the real versus perceived, right? Oftentimes our stress response gets triggered by things that we don't even notice are triggering it. And then maybe we get stuck in that pattern.
So many things. Think of your day, right? When anything that takes us out of balance, right? Anything that you get a text message, like something shows up that you don't see coming and you get this message and it's like, oh, what do I do with this now? Like this is now it's going to take me out of my routine, or I'm going to have to do this and I'm going to have to have a conversation. What's that conversation going to look like? And it could go this way. And now you're into all these different scenarios that haven't happened yet. And the body's like, this is not good. Okay. We're in threat. This is a threat.
Yeah.
Perceived threat. And it's self-imposed. But we're gonna get into that response because you've kind of taken us there.
So that happened. I'm very aware of when it happens now, but I'm still not terribly gifted at fixing it. I get the text message or I get the email that totally surprises me, or I have, the meeting that I thought was going to go one way and it goes a different way for issues beyond my control. And all those things happen, right? Heart rate goes up. In my case, I turn red and my temperature goes up. Like I get to the place where the blood flow is such that I could outrun the lion, right? Like that's my body is telling me there is a perceived threat. Give me something to do. What do I do? Give me an idea of, I know maybe you're going to tell me it's different for different people, but what are some of the strategies when you notice yourself there that you could pull out of the back pocket to help yourself come back from that sympathetic response?
Yeah, one of the quickest routes to self-regulation is working with your breath. And I know you know this through your yoga practice and experience, and it's something. It's a base level skill that I work with most all of my clients with, is teaching them how to breathe. It may sound kind of funny because we're all always breathing, but to consciously, the breath is always moving in us. Can we pull on that lever consciously and start to change the rhythm and the depth of the breath? Which, not to get into the science, but there's a whole process that happens with, the nervous system. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system.
The other side, right? Tell me what parasympathetic means and what does it feel like?
Yeah, parasympathetic is, I think of it as our nervous system as a gas pedal and a brake pad. Right? The gas pedal is the sympathetic, is the go, is the do.
Go.
Rest is the do, 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 do. The parasympathetic is the brake pad. It's rest and digest. It's coming back into balance, right? And there's a lot of ways to regulate the nervous system. But I have found for me, breathing slowly and deeply, there's a number of different breathing exercises that you can do that would achieve that. It's slowing the breath down, which activates the parasympathetic. It's science.
It is science. It's true. And when I think too about, and I want to get to now the work that you do in the workplace, because I think a lot of this, certainly even 3 or 4 years ago, breathing exercises in the workplace, like nobody did that. Nobody talked about that. And yet I think we're kind of at a turning point where people like you are having an impact in bringing awareness through organizations, because I've heard of this thing called email apnea, where because people get so wrapped up in what they're looking at on their screen, they actually forget to breathe. And it's causes this stress response just by looking at your email, not for what's going in the eyeballs, but for the fact that the breathing has stopped. So when it comes to what you've seen in the workplace or the work that you do in the workplace with groups and teams and so forth, have we moved the needle in the last 3 or 4 years? How are we doing?
It's a good question. I think it's an ongoing kind of slow moving process. I often think of what I do, be it one-on-one or in a group setting with any sort of organization or team or group. It's like, it's a seed planting operation with a lot of this stuff, Gillian. It's, some people aren't ready to hear it and aren't ready to do it, and that's just the reality of it. I think that one of the biggest things, if I can present this information in an accessible and practical way, like, I'm like you, I struggle like you. This is something that I've done. When I struggle with my mental health, this is what I did. I learned how to breathe, and breathing is kind of important. It allows me to do A, B, and C, right? So when you put it into practical terms and you make it accessible, and it's not some woo-woo, I got to sit in a meditation cushion for 30 minutes and I got to do this every day, and I'm like, I should be Zen and I shouldn't have thoughts. It's like, no, it's like this is one practice of many that you can integrate, that you can start to make slow change. And it's so fascinating. I had this experience, I worked out west for 3 years more recently on a large construction project on a mental wellness team or a mental health team. And I was the mental wellness educator. So I was working, in largely large groups, big groups of construction workers, and educating them on this stuff and how to self-regulate and how to use breathing practices. So I would go in front of groups of 10, groups of 50, groups of, a group of 200 and get up and talk about this stuff. And I will say there's a number of contractors. I was so pleasantly surprised by this with respect to the receptivity. So it's a tough industry, right? They've got tough jobs, and we all bring our stuff to the table. But my eyes were really open with respect to the job itself and what they're up against. These contractors and various jobs within construction. But to your point, it's like I've had presentations and I would work with groups, and then you see eyeballs open up. I think this is the ultimate thing for me. It's like, when somebody's listening and when somebody isn't listening.
Yes.
In any sort of interaction, right? Like,
yes,
they're distracted. They don't care. It's not meaningful for them. I've gotten really good at reading a room with what I do. So you can see when people are engaged. And so getting feedback from the leadership, from some of these contractors that I was doing these programs with, and workers coming up to me after the program and saying, hey, I struggle with this, and do you think it would help? And, just
that's
curiosity.
That's marvelous. Yes. Because when you said 10, 50, 200 construction workers, I'm thinking tough crowd. But if there's ever an example of the needle being moved, it was probably there. And I kind of look around the world and I think maybe the appetite for this is just about ripe. Because similar to your work, in my world, people don't often take action until there's a triggering event. And when there's a triggering event, now we're in fight or flight and everything has to be done quickly, instead of us building the reservoir of resilience over a number of years, or building the account, or building the relationship with your money or your kids or whatever. So it sounds like, this has been part of the public discussion for long enough that even a room full of 200 construction workers, their eyes start to open up. And that's pretty remarkable, but it's also a sign of where we're at, that the general stress level and distraction level that we're dealing with as a civilization is reaching a point.
You hit the nail on the head. It's something has to give, right? And how we've been operating in this world, both individually and collectively, I think it needs to change. And I think a lot of people are seeing that with their own well-being. And when you start to shine a light on that and you start to educate people on it, and, and let them know that there are possibilities, right? Like I think there's a naivety or just an unwillingness to explore this because it's an unknown. It's kind of out there. It's like, well, what's breath work? Like, why would how is that, like, how is breathing differently going to help me with what I do with my work? Like, there's just a lack of knowledge, I think, around, how you show up in anything when you're more self-regulated, be it your work or any sort of relationship. It's like,
Definitely. And if you're in chronic stress, you actually don't have the capacity to even understand. So you have to get out of it so you can listen. So you've talked about breath work being one of the ways in which, and even at our desks, we can do that, right? Even as a knowledge worker or between meetings, I can walk around the building and get some nature time. I can sit at my desk and do some box breathing or whatever my thing might be. What are other workplace friendly strategies for coming out of sympathetic into parasympathetic? What are some of the things that you have in your toolkit?
so this is going to sound really basic, and you may say, well, how would this help me get out of my head and into my body? And it's that practice itself is getting into your body, and breath work is a form of that. But like, just feeling any sort of sensation in the body, like your feet on the ground. I'm gathering your feet are on the ground right now.
They are.
Right? So if you bring your attention to the grounding feeling of your feet connected to the floor, and you just do your best to maintain attention in that area without analyzing it or saying, this is silly, or, oh, I don't like that feeling. Like, that's what the mind does, and it may do it, but see if you can just, your bare attention to notice a sensation, weight, pressure. What you're doing in that moment is you're consciously taking your attention, coming out of that cycle of thought, the rumination, the fear, the worry, the fantasy, the desire, whatever it is that may be limiting us in the moment, and you're de-energizing or you're short-circuiting that loop, that pattern. So bodily sensations, and we typically don't pay attention to them unless they're really, really amazing or they're really, really,
really bad.
Really bad. It's like, my God, like my knee, I can't tell you how many times you've probably done the same thing. It's like, ooh, man, this aging thing is real. It's like, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, that's right.
But like, just like, so who cares about my feet? Well, your feet are always in the present moment. Your feet can't be in the future. They can't be in the past. So be it your hands, your feet, I always like this grounding aspect that we can connect to that sense of touch and just give our attention to it. Now, we can't stay there all day, but
right.
In a moment, especially
it brings us
maybe a stressful,
down.
Anxious moment where we're in that story of what might happen, man, that can give us a little bit of a reprieve, a little bit of space to say, whoa, now, okay, that was good. Now I'm going to take another breath here, because maybe now I've got space to see it a little more clearly. I need to go for a 5-minute walk. Like, I'm really feeling this right now. So not only does it break the loop, but it also gives you space to maybe see the situation from a different perspective. And now choice.
Yes.
Instead of being tangled.
That brings me to another question, which is I have this kind of my own definition of the difference between mindfulness and meditation. But I think what you're talking about in this first bit has to do with strategies to get into the present, strategies to come out of fight or flight into something else. And then there's this other place we can go to called mindfulness. And then there's this other place we can go to called meditation. What are those other, how are they different? And why do we use them? Because I know we can't really be mindful if we're in fight or flight, right? We have to be in another place for that. But both of them have a great use when it comes to flourishing and it comes to staying connected to people and feelings and the right drive when it comes to achievement and growth. Talk to me about those two things.
Yeah. So we've been speaking about mindfulness. We haven't phrased it as such to this point, but all the things that we're speaking about are mindfulness really is, which is present moment awareness, right? Present moment awareness with an attitude of curiosity, kindness, acceptance. That's, a lot of the great teachers have kind of phrased it that way. Jon Kabat-Zinn was one of my earliest. I don't know the man, but I feel like he's a mentor for me along this path. And that's kind of his formal definition, is just being here, being present, and being aware and like what's happening right now. So you can do this so many different ways, formally and informally, right? So we spoke about the breath and kind of shifting the breath. Like when you bring awareness to your breathing, that's kind of an informal mindfulness practice, right? You can turn that into a mindfulness meditation whereby it's a little more formal, right? You're actively cultivating that aspect of attention and awareness in a more kind of a systematic way. Like there's different ways to practice it, but mindfulness meditation is really a formal practice of cultivating greater present moment awareness. So feet on the floor, that would be an informal mindfulness practice, right? Where you're just taking that attention, that awareness, and taking control of it and bringing it down to your feet or any other sensation in your body. Oh, we know the world through our senses. Again, there's like a million ways to do this, but like, what are you hearing right now? You're hearing my voice. And you are, I can sense you are mindfully connected. So you're listening to me with curiosity. You're having thoughts along the way, but
I'm trying not to, because that doesn't help. Honestly, it really doesn't. Doing the podcasts themselves is a great exercise in mindfulness because you have to be here.
You have to, because you have to pay attention to what I'm saying. If you're going to have a follow-up question to what I'm saying, you have thoughts, but there's more space in there. You're not thinking, okay, I should say this, and maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but you can bring awareness to it all is what I'm trying to say.
True.
And it's all practice. It's all practice. So from the moment that we get up in the morning to the moment that we go to bed, we have an ability to practice.
Practice being at attention.
To be here. And to notice what's actually happening. Yeah.
Fantastic. I want to now take the idea of connection to the body very quickly. It's my second last question, but this connection to the body and being present and bring it into the realm of high-level athletics. What does that do for a high-level athlete when we are able to wipe the slate the way we can with meditation and be here and be connected? Because I tell you, there's been moments where I didn't do that. My head was definitely too much in the game and there wasn't enough feeling. Are you doing work like that with athletes and what are some of the results that happen there?
Yeah, well, from your performance piece, right? How that plays out for you. You just
Yeah.
I mean, performance comes in all shapes and sizes, right? Be it work or athletics or in other things in our life. But, this idea that we can strengthen our ability to be here, fully here for what we're doing. And back to the outcome piece, like letting go of what I think it should look like, what I think it should be, the level of achievement, what are the possibilities? Like if I let my mind go to the future and I start to play out scenarios and I start to project, it's taking away from what I'm actually doing in this moment. So if you bring that into athletics, it's, and I'm just going to talk about hockey. It's like you have to have a short memory. Like, you have a bad shift, you make a bad play, you make a bad pass, you turn the puck over, you miss a breakaway, right? Instead of stewing on that, you get back to the bench and you sit on the bench and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I did that. And now it's like, coach is like, am I going to get back on the ice? And like, what does this mean? It's like, we get into those stories, right? Now that impacts our physiology. Now we're in the stress response. Now we're in, now we're worried, right? So now there's tension. So now we're gripping the stick a little tighter. And now we're not as free. We're not in flow, right?
Brilliant.
As opposed to park that, take a breath. I'm going to come into my body. I'm going to practice letting that go. And like, I'm imperfect. I'm going to mess up. It's all right. That self-compassion piece. And then you get out the next shift and you do your best again. So,
and you stay in the moment.
That can change your experience so vastly, right? When you're present versus when you're in your head and right. There's some of that's naturally going to happen, but so any aspect of performance, you can apply that to. Just get out of your head and get into your body. And when you do that, Gillian, I know you know this. You're at your best when you are here. You're not worrying about like what the performance is going to look like and you're just in the process. You've trained your mind, you've trained your body. You've done all the work up until this point. Now you just got to let it go and do your thing.
That's right. Don't think, just do. That's the mantra. Don't think, just do. Now I want to take this just very briefly out of the elite athlete space into the everyday person space of the news, right? So instead of having a bad shift on the ice, we have the flood of information coming at us about things we can't control. What are some tips for dealing with that?
Well, don't get on social media.
That's one thing. Or if you do, at least put the algorithm out there and say, that is happening, but it's not happening to me, or whatever the case may be. There's got to be this separation of it not being your present. It is just this other thing. How do you tell your mind to deal with that?
That's a big practice, and it's there's a mindset that comes with it. I think and I come back to this awareness piece. And if you notice in the moment when you're taking in the outside world, whatever outlet that is, and you feel that helplessness, that frustration, that anger, that like, just, I can't believe this is happening. And then you get into this state and then it's swirling, and now you're entangled, and it's like, now your whole, it's a whole thing. If you can practice bringing awareness to that experience, right? Like, again, this is easier said than done. When you strengthen at the base level with this, when you get that foundation of taking this mind and being able to guide it to certain things and not being so distracted, you can start to shine a light on, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling anxious because this event happened.
Labeling it, yes.
I see it happening. Okay, I don't have control over it. It's making me feel anxious. I can feel my heart start to beat, and I can feel the tension. Let me step back, maybe employ a slow, deep in an exhale to self-regulate some, so that you can have a different perspective on it, because it's just, once we're enmeshed, it's sometimes really hard to get out of it.
100%. It's interesting how maybe, and this is the Gillian silver lining version of the story, but maybe at this point in history, this is the way that we, some of us, hopefully all of us, learn to self-regulate more, because we can't stop that algorithm. We can't stop the fake news. We can't stop the pouring of information at us. The only thing we can control is me and how I respond to it. So I'm going to go with, fingers crossed, this is going to make us all stronger, because we learn self-regulation as a result of this tidal wave of distraction that is constantly headed our way. Do you think that's possible?
I do. Let me add one more thing in, because this is another practice in and of itself, is acceptance. Like, a big part of this mindfulness practice is acceptance, and that may bring up resistance to some people that are taking in this podcast, because we're not conditioned to just accept. We're conditioned to do and to make change and get our hands on something and influence it. But as you said just a moment ago, like, we can't control the vast majority of things. So it's my practice to understand that and to shift my mindset into, I can't control this. I have to let it go. Easier said than done, but it is doable. I work with this on a daily basis within myself when it comes to exactly the thing you're talking about, the outside world, the politics of it all, and all of the chaos. It's like, I've had to work really hard at creating space, and just, I'm going to do all I can with me to be as balanced and as self-regulated, as clear seeing as I can, so I can come out into the world in the best way I can, because that's all I can do.
That is what you can do. That's right. That's right. That's right. And that's how we can stay socially connected to people in a healthy way. And it's how we can practice positive physical and mental health and all those things.
All those things.
Yeah, all those things. Thank you. All right. My last question I ask of every podcast guest on the Flourish Feed podcast has to do with this thing called the moment of bliss. It is the inverse of a pet peeve. So where a pet peeve is a small thing that causes a disproportionately large negative feeling, this is a small thing that causes a disproportionately large or significant positive feeling. Something that you look forward to in your day or week. Greg Klym, what is your moment of bliss?
Can I give you two?
Yes, always.
and it's probably going to sound like it's a bit on brand, but it is my reality. I love, and you may feel the same way about your morning routine. I absolutely love the space that I create when I first get out of bed. And I'm a coffee drinker, so I love my coffee experience, but I love solitude. I could be addicted to this whole self-discovery piece. I'm covering this because it's one of my favorite things to do, is to explore the deeper parts of me. So I get my coffee, and if it's warm, I sit outside. If it's not, as it's turning now, I'm having to come in, and I just sit in quiet, and sometimes I think, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I breathe. Sometimes I, just let the breath move naturally. But it's where I get my most meaningful insights and my most meaningful learnings about me, and be it work life, personal life, what I need to do. It's where I gain clarity, and I absolutely love that. Second thing is, I've gone through various phases of my life where it's been very serious and very just tense and stress and not a lot of laughter. I love to laugh. I love to be light. I love to weave that into my day somehow, some way. So I'm always looking for ways socially to connect with friends and with family that bring that out in me. Does it happen every day? No, but I'm always on the hunt for it, right? I'm always on the hunt for laughter, because I know how it serves me. I know how it makes me feel. And it just lightens me up, and it just feels so good. And I love to laugh. I love to belly laugh and be light. So I
Brilliant.
Those moments I just live for.
Aside from the neurochemistry of laughter, which I know you know about, you don't even have to know about that part to know that that is a great part of life. And I have to say, I am so grateful to have you in my network of coaches for as long as we have known each other, and hopefully for many more years in the future. Thank you for joining me on the Flourish Feed podcast. I hope to have you back again.
Gillian, this has absolutely been amazing. So thank you so much for your time and your thoughtful questions and the engagement. It's been brilliant. Loved it.
And what is it you would say at the end of a yoga class?
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.